Hey guys, it's Miko from MO Sound Lab, and today I'm gonna fix your writer's block. Okay, so I've been in quite many bands and different music projects, and many times, or most of the time, I'm actually the main writer in those music projects, and I don't really find myself ever being in a writer's block situation. And the reason for that, I think, is that I have a good foundation in theory that I completely forgot, but I have a very well-working, simple system that I think I can share with you guys. If you are experiencing writer's block, I highly recommend you try this one out. So let's see if this fixes it for you. Now the reason why I'm actually using an acoustic guitar today is because this is one part of the puzzle. If you are always writing your music on the same instrument, like an electric guitar, even switching to an acoustic one actually forces you to kind of forget your finger muscle memory and all that stuff and just focus on the song. Now, the bulletproof way of always coming up with a new song idea is to focus on two things at the same time when you're actually making music. I know as guitar players we many times just make riffs, and sorry to say, but that is not a song. That's just a tiny part of a song. You want to actually think about the structure and where the song is going and all that stuff. That is actual songwriting. So the two things to focus on is minimal change and leading melodies. And those are real concepts in music theory, but I'm gonna be giving you the layman's version and very interesting and simple grasp over those concepts here. And I'm gonna prove how they work, and I'm probably gonna make a song here on the spot that's gonna be pretty impressive to some people. Most likely not to all you musicians out there, but remember, the listener doesn't have your theory and skills on your instrument, so stop trying to impress other musicians. Instead, make amazing songs that speak to people. So when I'm talking about minimal change and leading melodies, let's just pick a chord like a G major chord. Minimal change would be to take this idea from a G major chord to a different place by just changing one tiny thing. For example, just one note out of this chord and turn it into a chord progression essentially. So for example, taking the G and just changing it one semitone. So now that is the simplest way I can demonstrate this to you. You've heard that in so many songs, and the reason you've heard it is because it works in songwriting. It's a very pleasant sound having minimal change. Now the other concept that I'm talking about is leading melody. So this is the leading melody now. But if we even continue this melody in the simplest form possible, let's for example just have four notes right next to each other. That is a subconscious thing that you are focusing on. That would be your leading melody now in this example. The simplest melody you can come up with. Obviously this works with more complex melodies too, and that is where the magic happens, but just for demonstration's sake, I'm going to show you why this works. So leading melodies once again and minimal change. That is why I'm always just going to the next note in this example. And I'm going to show you what kind of a chord progression you come up with when doing this kind of a minimal change. So let's say we have that leading melody. Well, let's play it from here. What are the chords that you can actually build with those notes? So if we go from a G, if this is the first chord, it could be a D. So this is probably one of the most common chord progressions or chord switches in music theory. Or the same minimal change and keeping the chord almost exactly the same. Another super common chord progression or switch So that would be a B minor. So and you've heard that a million times, and the reason why you've heard that a million times is because it works so well. Now, what would be the next note? That would be an E, so we could just play an E minor in this example. And the last one is a D, but we already played a D, so not to be too boring, let's not go back to D. We could have one of these chords be the B minor and one of them be the D, but I think that's gonna sound very sad. Let's try. Now, another common version for this would be not to use the B, but use a C instead. And the reason you'd want to use that is because, once again, minimal change. With very minimal change, you can actually go from C back to the G chord, which was the first chord. So, C. And because of that leading melody, we're gonna include the D note into this C chord. So already we have a chord that is not just an average chord, it's actually a C add 2 or C9, whichever you wanna think about. But you know, like I said, I promised no theory stuff, just gonna explain why this works. So now what you're thinking is, that is the most common chord progression I've ever heard, and it is one of the most common chord progressions, but the entire point here was that I explained to you why it works, and it works because of minimal change and leading melody. So we have an ascending melody within these chords. And yes, you've heard these chords a million times. That is essentially the punk rock chord progression. So and most of us musicians would automatically say that we're not going to work on this idea because it's been done a million times. And it's true, but also at the same time, you can take this idea and turn it into something more interesting that hasn't necessarily been heard. Let me try and do that here on the spot. So if we just pick 2 notes, so I'm trying to actually simplify this and turn it into something that maybe isn't so basic. You can only do so much with these basic chords, but if we play G up high, up here, we could do something like this. And we can spice it up. So already we have a very beautiful concept and idea, and you're not necessarily even hearing that leading melody, and that is the most important part. I know it, I know what's happening on the backside of this thing, why this works, but the listener does not. And I can use that leading melody when coming up with vocal melodies, for example, for this part. So if I was making a vocal melody on top of this idea, it would be something like so. You know, not exactly like that, but you already have a good foundation for what kind of melody will actually work. So let's say we already have this kind of a verse idea. What do we do next? So we could, for example, take the B chord that I already said sounded kind of sad and use that sort of as a pre-chorus. So if we play the spiced up version of the verse. Now remember, minimal change. How do I go to a B with minimal change? Just use one note different here. So I mean, that may as well be the pre-chorus, kind of a ramp or vamp. It's called a vamp between B and C. So and actually you can go down here. And once again, minimal change. The very next sound after B would be an A. And a very logical thing to happen right now would be that there's a break in the song. And because we are in A, we already used this technique once in the song. Let's do it again. So going from C to G is very natural because it's only 5 semitones away. Let's do the same thing here. So now a logical thing to happen would be to be a chorus. And 5 semitones away from A would be an E. A works amazingly well because we've never heard that chord before in this song. So when the listener actually hears that A chord and the song pauses, it's automatically messaging to the listener that, okay, change is coming. Very powerful tool to introduce a new chord right before a chorus to kind of have a break there. Now, I'm actually gonna use the same idea of leading melody and minimal change and come up with a chord progression. I'm just gonna play it. I'm gonna tell you afterwards what it was, and let's see if you can actually tell what I did. You could actually include D into every chord in the chorus because it was in the pre-chorus, just to spice it up a little bit and make it more interesting. Once again, I'm doing this as I go, new ideas flushing in my head because I know what I'm gonna do. Let's see what I come up with. And there's that A again, telling to the listener that change is coming. And the change obviously after that would be back to the verse. Now I hope some of you are impressed by how good that sounds, but I'm sure many of you are like, oh, I've heard this a million times, so basic. The idea here is that you can always spice things up, but understanding that there is kind of a logic behind everything that's happening here. Now, did you pick up on what I actually did with the chorus? Why did I choose those chords exactly? And if you actually noticed, on the fly, I played 2 different chord progressions using leading melody. So I chose another leading melody because in the verse we're actually doing a leading melody that's ascending from the root notes. Now we're doing one that's going up from the root note. So E, F sharp, G, A. So in the verse we are secretly sending this melody to the listener. And then in the pre-chorus we're kind of pausing here. And in the chorus we're doing this. very simple, but it works because it is simple, but it's on the background. You're not hearing it necessarily up front. So the chords that I actually played was spicing everything up with that D. So has that E in there. D chord obviously has the D in it, and also has that leading melody note. G. And then the last note, I spiced it up quite a bit just because I didn't want to spoil the A yet, so I actually played a D with an A and with an F sharp in the bass. Like I said, you can spice these up, but it works because we know why it's gonna work. So that's a cool chord, by the way. And I actually used this chord again right here. So once again on the second chord progression. And now the leading note will be the F sharp. And now ending with the A to signify change for the listener again. You only hear the A chord when there's gonna be change in the song. And that is the logic behind it, and that is why it works. And then you go back to the verse. Back to the E, sorry, back to the A chord, and now back to the chorus again. And A. Now, if this was a rock song, that would be where a breakdown happens. So you could play a kind of a riff from E, I suppose, because we are in A again. So. But even when making these kinds of riffs on the spot, I'm gonna try and use some of the ideas that we already used, so the riff kind of belongs to this idea. On the spot, let's see what the interesting chords were that we actually used. Should we use the chorus? We can use the chorus, kind of that idea. So So no, just improvising here. But even now we know that that kind of a riff would belong in this song logically, because we are once again using that same underlying concepts and logic for making this kind of a song. Now, as I already said, that is the most simplest way for me to demonstrate Neo-Riemannian, essentially, which is the theory of minimal change. Look it up if you are a nerd. Now, like I said, that is the most common way for me to demonstrate that, but where really you come up with the most unique ideas is where you take a leading melody that is not necessarily in a scale, and that is where all the interesting cool stuff happens. So simply geeking out with this concept just is so fruitful for making a gazillion songs, and that is how I personally make songs. I can make so many of them, and ultimately a good one comes, and we turn it into a song with a band. But let's on purpose make this as difficult as possible, and I'll show you some demonstrations of different leading melodies that led me to come up with some cool, unique ideas. So this is one chord progression from one of my kind of a British pop, I suppose, rock band that I once had. So it goes like this. So doesn't sound too complicated, right? But it has a chromatic leading melody. So what you're not hearing, what is happening in the backside is 4 chromatic notes in those 4 chords. So this E chord, so So there's a chromatic melody hidden in this very happy kind of a chord progression. I have a similar one from kind of a grungy band. And it has a chromatic melody going up, like this. You might wonder how you can even make that catchy. So maybe it isn't catchy, but it sounds like this. So I suppose sounds quite a bit like Nirvana or something like that. So kind of showing you some extremes of melodies that necessarily don't even sound like melodies because they are chromatic. Obviously you can mix things up. So you come up with like a cool, original, weird melody and then come up with a chord progression on top of that by using the theory of minimal change and leading melody. And I think you will have no problems making new songs that are interesting. And it's actually really simple, just like that. I know I used an acoustic guitar and you may be thinking like, I don't even play acoustic guitar music, so this isn't for me. I don't play acoustic music myself either, just using this as the tool for making the songs, and it really helps and works to use something that you usually don't. So you could make this a song that is metal, you could make this a pop punk song, you could turn this into a reggae song, like... I mean, do whatever you want with these kinds of ideas. If you ever feel like you're stuck in a song, you don't know where to take it, use this theory and you can make something very logical and cool come out. Thank you so much for watching this video. I truly hope this helps because I know it sucks having writer's block. This is what I do myself and never experienced writer's block. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've been Mikko from Emo Sound Lab and stay tuned for the next one. Bye bye.